only if there's a tefach, only if the kaira on top is a tefach, it's chashav, it's really an oil in many ways. Only if it has a tefach of space could you actually bring it down. If there's no tefach, you don't say chavait rami. So Yosef Rav Kahana was sitting in Karmel Shmait and he was saying over this what Rava taught. Amalei Rav Ashi Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, anytime you don't have a tefach, you don't say chavei rami. I Vatan, you learned in the Brisa, and again this Brisa is referring to you have an alleyway. You have an alleyway, and in this alleyway you want to be able to walk and carry things over there. So we're scared you're going to end up going into the Rosh Hashanah, which is connected to the alley. So you do is you have a small little reminder, a hecker, something to recognize that don't go past this. And either it could be a side post or it could be a beam running along the top. We're talking about a beam. So the Brisa says, a beam is sticking out from one kaisel and it can't reach the other kaisel. It's almost there, but it doesn't reach. Similarly, you have two beams. One's coming out of one wall. And one's coming from the other wall. They're not touching each other in the middle. So the rule is like this. Pachas min shleishiv is less than 3 tvachim. You don't need to bring another beam because you have lava. Shleisha, once it's 3 tvachim and more, you need to bring another beam. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he argues. He says, Pachas me'arbav is less than 4 tvachim. Ain't tzarech lavi karacheres. You don't need to bring another beam because he holds less than 4. You say love it as well. Arba, once it's 4, tzarech lavi karacheres. You need to bring another beam. This is where we're up to in this case. We started at the beginning, but we left off in the middle of Shimon argues. We're going to start over here. V'chein shtei koiros hamatimas. You have two twin beams, side by side, running across the wall. They're 100% perfect in terms of their length. The problem is, loy bezu kedei lekabel ariach, v'loy bezu kedei lekabel ariach. They're both next to each other, but each one does not have the ability to hold the width of an ariach. An ariach is a brick, a half brick, that's 3 tefachim long and 1.5 tefachim wide. It doesn't have enough of a width, these kairas, to hold a tefach of this brick. Now it doesn't have to hold the entire brick, the brick a tefach and a half, because it's able to hold it as long as it's a tefach, even though there's a drop overhang, if you would put that brick there, but technically it could stay there, you could even put some tar there to keep it up, and al kapanim, it doesn't have to be more than a tefach. So each one doesn't have the amount. See, here we go. This is the rule. If both of them together could accept and hold a riach, a half brick, l'rachbay, widthwise, which is 1.5 tefachim. Now, this is a very tricky way to read this. I don't know if I read this correctly last time. The word tefach, after the word l'rachbay, is going on the kaira, both kairas together. It's not going back on the brick. Nachamo. If both beams, if they're able to accept an ariach, the half brick, l'rachbay, widthwise, and its width is 1.5 tefachim, that means both of the beams are a tefach. That tefach is going on the beams. Then, ein tzarech lavi karacheres, you don't need to bring another beam. So the tefach is, if both of those beams together have the width of a tefach, that means they could hold a brick that's a tefach and a half, and therefore, you're good. Vim lav, but if they are not wide enough, they're not a tefach, putting them both together, then tzarech lavi karacheres, you need another beam. Because you need to have the width of a tefach. I don't care if it's one beam or two beams, but both beams together got to be a tefach. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be considered a substantial amount of a kare, because it has to be able to officially hold a brick if you would put one there. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel argues. He's lenient. The same way he was lenient before, he's lenient here, but for a whole different reason. He holds, in mekablois, if they are able to hold, when we say hold here, it means strength. I'd write in the word strength. He's more about the strength. If they have the strength to hold an ariach la'arkai, a brick along its length, and now this is also confusing. I'm sorry, it's just confusing. When you read it clearly, that's what you have to do. Shleisha tvachim is going on the brick, not on the beam. If it has the strength to hold a half a brick, for the lengthwise of 3 tefachim, ein tzarich lavi karacheres. You don't need to bring another beam. Let me explain this outside. The Tanna Kama Shita is the beams have to stay next to each other. You cannot separate them. It's a great shtick, right? If you want to hold a brick that's longer than the beams, so just separate the beams and then place a brick would fit very nicely. If they're next to each other and they're too thin, the brick's going to just fall off So the Tanna Kama holds, too bad. They have to be thick enough, wide enough. They're right up next to each other. They're a tefach. Rishon Gamliel says, no, separate them. Do whatever you want to do. Separate them. As long as by separating them, they be able to have the strength, they can handle the heaviness of a brick, then that's fine. So you could separate the beams, but they have to have the strength to hold a brick lengthwise, 3 tvachim. I have no clue, if someone can find out the answer to me, why it has to be able to hold it lengthwise. Why can't I hold it widthwise? Just separate the beams, and you have the one half tvachim width of the brick on it. Why would they change it to the length? I don't know the answer to this question. But why you're allowed to play around with the beams? So what's the difference if you play around the beam to be able to hold 3 tvachim of width or 1.5? All you need is 1.5. So just do the 1.5 way. What?
Same weight.
It's the same weight either way, right? Unless you tell me that for some reason it's heavier when you put a brick lengthwise than you do widthwise. I don't know why it would be like that. Who cares? First of all, 3 tvachim here, so it's going to be even further apart.
You don't really care for the brick. You care if it's thicker for the air.
You want it to have it has to be chashav enough and wide enough that it could hold a brick. You can play around as much as you want. So what's the difference if you make it longer, separate them further, and now you're holding the lengthwise of the brick? 3 tvachim?
You're not actually holding a brick with it.
It's not actually, but it has the ability that you could be able to.
So if the bigger is further apart, if they're closer together, it's more like one beam.
This is even further because I want to hold 3 tvachim of width. The lengthwise is much longer, so that means they have to be separated further.
That's why it's a bigger finish.
Why? Because you can separate it further? Once you can separate it, so what's the difference how far you separate?
He's giving you a getter.
He's giving you a getter how far you can separate. He wants to do the farther one. Okay? So now he's saying that you could separate, he wants to show you how much you can separate. To me, it's like, once you're separating them, what's the difference if it's 1.5, 3 tvachim? Again, he's saying the most lenient way possible to show you the longest. Could be even more. Could be even more. I hear what you're saying. You don't need to have more than 3 anyways. You don't need more than 3.
If it's further than 3, it won't hold the brick.
It will follow the brick. Right. Okay, so the point is, he's saying it's showing how far you could go. Even though you have the ability, once you hit 1.5, you're good. Like, why would you go further, right? All you need is the fish you hold in the rear, which is 1/2 width, 3 tvachim length. So once you can hit the 1/2 mark and you're holding it, why would you go even longer and do it lengthwise?
Isn't it thinner?
What? The length is longer than the width. That means you're doing the lengthwise, you're turning it, and then you put the beams even further.
Each one of the quivers can be thinner.
It could be thinner.
But the Rav described the picture on that shows
Okay, let's look at the picture. Thank you. Take a picture. Look at page Lamed Beis. Page Lamed Beis, picture Lamed Daled. Picture Lamed Daled on page Lamed Beis. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, separate the beams. If you could put it the lengthwise, which is 3 tvachim length, and they can rest like that, that's totally fine. Why would you do that? Flip it the other way, and you have it much earlier on with 1.5. Why would you go? Not following?
Because I agree to say it's bigger now. I have more space now. Put more stuff right.
But it just has to be able to hold.
What do you want?
I want the beams to be closer, and to have it flip the brick around so it's holding 1.5 of width. Not 3 tvachim of
The
width.
only way you can hold the brick is if there's 3
Yeah.
tvachim apart. Make it closer and just do it the other side.
Yeah. Right? You don't have to keep going to 3 longer. You could just do 1.5. You don't have to actually hold the brick. So the second you move it a drop, you already could hold a 1.5 tvachim. What are you gaining? Yeah.
I think the short back.
Maybe this is how they lay bricks.
Yeah, you know about
So it's
Could
like
be.
more of a What's the point of the brick to begin?
The brick is just a way of showing that's a strong festa beam. This beam it's wide, it's strong, that's all.
It has to be that.
But it's the same weight. Which way you turn it, the brick, it's fine.
It's not the weight differently.
Spreads the weight differently? This takes more weight?
This takes
Less weight?
no. This takes more weight.
Takes more
All the
weight.
takes less.
Okay, so Moshe is saying a chiddush. If this is true, to talk to construction people, he's saying this is more heavier this way. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand these things. To me, it's the same weight. You put the brick one way, put the brick the other way.
Once
Should I
you
describe it again?
once
He's a
they're
roofer.
We
separated.
have a roofer, by the way. That's like Chavait Rami. He likes this whole thing here. I wish you could do Chavait Rami on everyone's roof.
There's more support along the other way now.
The more you separate, okay, anything, the more you separate.
How does a boat float on water? All the weight is spread out across a wide area, so it
Both
pushes
floats
away
away
the
because
water.
it doesn't dispense as much weight.
If you take a brick the size of a boat, it's not going to float. If you take a brick the size of a boat, it's not going to float.
Anyways, well, I'll leave it as a question. You can discuss it.
Right? And the reason displacing it is why.
No, you're not displacing any more weight. It's the same,
Further away.
it's the same, as long as it's
Further away,
balanced,
there's more-
as long as it's
Huh?
balanced, it's the same amount
beat's
of weight,
much
sitting in the
thinner.
same spot.
That's the finish.
What is the
The quiver is
difference?
much thinner when it can go
If it's
against the wall
balanced.
with the width.
Why?
If it's even.
Because if it's next to each
So
other, then
it
you
doesn't
can
matter if
force
it's
it
one
to hold
half
it up.
apart
If
or
it's spread even
one
far further,
If there was-
each.
But what's
the
the-
wall
but-
like
but-
this, each end of it is hold the dropping good.
Well, yeah.
How are you holding it?
Put it closer.
It's not exactly true.
Why?
Put it closer to the wall.
Put the beams closer, and the beams hold it.
No, the weight holds.
What's the difference if we go like
It's gonna
that?
fall on the side.
So do as much as you could.
It's gonna be thinner.
You're saying if it's so thin, it's razor
It's
thin?
much
Not more
thinner.
surface
If you
area.
put up a beam.
Could you go razor thin even?
You go much thinner when you go further out.
Correct. Once you separate them.
Okay, so Shmuel wants to say, if it's so thin, the beam, because he's right, I know the answer. If it's so thin, the beams, then the only way to hold it is by doing the three-way one and moving further back. Because it's such a thin situation, if you go too close, it's going to
You
fall.
have two thin beams next to each other.
Yeah.
You put a wide thing on it, it's gonna fall down. If you move it further apart, you put one across it, it'll hold it for sure.
Even if you do 1.5
Take
that
two
way?
bamboos here. We'll take two bamboos. We'll make an experiment.
Okay. Okay, fine. I was bothered by that. Al Kapanim, the point is, if Shimon Gamliel is more lenient, that you could spread the kairos apart. That's the main idea. As long as they're strong enough to hold the brick. Okay, next case. Take a look at your pictures, guys, for this case. This is where it's at, by the way. This case is where it's at. So you got, this is it. On page Lamed Beis. Page Lamed Beis, picture Lamed Hey. And I'm going to read it with the caption, because it's really the Lashon Habraisa. Hayu achas lamala v'achas lamata. You got one beam up, one beam down. Again, they're not as wide of a tefach. You need to have a tefach. Here you don't have a tefach in each one. So very thin beams, one's up, one's down. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda says, Royin ha'oyayna, you look at the top one, ki'ilu hi lamata, as if it's low. Vesatachtan, in the lower one, ki'ilu hi lamala, as if it's up. Means sort of like a chavait rami. You could bring the two together. Even though one's up and one's down, we look at it, Royin, as if they're side by side. This is what the Brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda. Uvovad, as long. Uvovad means and only. What?
Which one are we moving up? Either or?
Oh, it's very good. We only learned about Chavei Rami. Bring it down. The Lashon of Brisa sounds like, look at the up like it's down, and the down like it's up. Almost like there's a concept that brings something up. This could have what to do with, I don't want to get off topic. Remember the tumah in the middle floor of the house? We talked about bringing it down, and nothing in the middle getting tummy, but could be you could bring it up and be the tam of the whole house. Could be totally in this.
The more has to be either or, because if you bring the ones that are down up and the ones that are up down, you're back to the same issue. They're not next to each other.
But I guess not
the more has to be
simultaneously.
either do either or.
Right. Either or they meet each other.
It's vast. It's both.
Or they meet. Or they meet, Shmuel David. As he's bringing this one down, this one comes up and they meet.
Right.
But either way, we look at it like a Chavait Rami situation. Uvovad, and only as long, Shaleite el yoina lamala me'esim amma. The top one can't be more than 20 amma side. In general, a rule about the koira, we spoke about how it has to reach from one wall to the other. We spoke about it needs to be a tefach thick. It also can't be too high. 20 ammas, no one even sees it. So as long as it's not too high, like 20 amma side, And the bottom one can't be lower than 10 tefachim. Can't be too low the kaira. That's another rule. Can't be within from the floor. From the floor, it's got to be 10 tefachim high up.
It's on the bottom of the other beam.
The ground in general. So these two beams, you can play around with them. One could be high up, one could be low down, as long as the top one's not too high up past 20 amas, and the low one's not too low down, lower than 10 tvachim. As a general rule, whenever it says asara in that lashon, it's tvachim. Okay, whenever it's like with a hey at the end, it's referring to tvachim. So, going back to the brisa on the page of Chavez and Mabez, just reading it inside. Hayu achas lamalav, one was above. They're both less than a tefach, but one was above. Achas lamata, one's below. Rabbi Yehuda says, Royin elyon. You look at the top one, kilu hilamata, as if it's lowered. Vesatachton, the bottom one, kilu hilamal, as if it's up. Uvilvad, and only as long as shaloi tehei elyon lamala me'esim amma, as long as the top one is not above 20 amas, that's way too high. V'atachton, and the lower one, lamata me'asar, can't be lower than 10 tvachim. That is the lashon habraisa. We have just finished a very long brisa, starting from Chav Beis Amud Aleph till here, and here comes the punchline. Ask the Gemara, and this is Rav Ashi asking Rav Kahana, what comes out? Here's my kasha. What comes out? If both of these beams, which you're hiring and lowering, are within 20 amas, both beams are besoich esrim within 20 amas, amrina, we say chaveit rami. You could bring it down and lower it. Afagav, the less be tefach, even though you don't have a tefach. Right? We're talking about kairas that do not have a tefach, and we're talking about one's up, one's low, and we're saying we look at it like they're laying side by side, and that gives you your full tefach. What you're telling me is that you say chavay rami without having the thickness of a tefach. Kasha and Rava. How could Rava say only when you have a tefach you say chavay rami before Shavraisa? Not like that. Good kasha. Bomb. This is the Gemara answers. This is Rav Kahana responding back to Rav Ashi. Amalei said to him like this: Teritz, you could answer ve'emachi and say this. He knocks him out. Easy answer. You read the brisa wrong. This is how you have to read it. Uvovad, and only, and as long as shaloi tehei elyono lamala me'esrim. When it said that lashon uvovad, it's saying is as long as the top one is not above 20 amas, ela b'soich esrim, but within 20 amas. The hatachtoina smuchala, and the bottom one is next to it. B'pachas mishleisha, within 3 tvachim. You read it like two cases. You read it like one case. As long as the top one's not too high and the bottom one is not all the way too low, then they connect. You read it wrong. That is not how you read the brisa. The brisa is just saying is, as long as the top one and the one next to it are not too high up and they're within 3 tvachim from each other. Or another case we're going to read in a second, both are not too low and they're within 3 tvachim of each other. But not that one's up and one's down. Again, he says like this. Ve'emachi, say like this. Uvovad, and only shleitehel yoinel lamala me'esrim. The top one can't be higher than 20 amas. Ela b'seich esrim, rather within 20 amas. V'hatachtoina smuchala, and the one below it, the beam, is next to it. B'pachas mishloisha. It could just be within 3 tvachim, which is loved. Inami, or the Brisa says the opposite, another case, or also 3 tvachim 3 tvachim higher and lower from each other, but they're both within that 20. Yeah, but they're very close to each other.
It's not side by side, one's like this.
No, they are side by side, up and low, though. Means they're running, what do you call that? It's like this. One's up, one's staggered. They're staggered, yeah. Inami, or also, as long as the bottom one is not below 10 tvachim, rather above 10 tvachim. And the one above it is right next to it, the pachas mishleisha, within 3. But if it's more than 3, then you're out of loved. Kivin delas tefach, and you don't have a tefach because the kairas are not a tefach thick. You don't say chaveit rami. He answers like this. The way Rav Ashi learned the brisa was, it was like one jumbo case. You could say it when the beams are like this. You could say chaveit rami as long as this is not too high and this is not too low. You could say chaveit rami. He says you read it wrong. What it's saying is, it's 2 separate cases. As long as this beam is not too high up, above 20 amas. But this one's right here. This one's right here, within 3 tvachim, and you have love it. then they connect because of Lavid. Case 2 is it's below, but not too low that it's below 10 tvachim, and the other one's right here within 3 tvachim. Yeah, then it works as Lavid. But if they're not within 3 tvachim of each other, then we don't say chavay rami because they're not a tefach.
So he adds it on 3 tvach because the
Yeah,
price that was
yeah.
quoted doesn't say
Because he does say roinel yoina kilu lamata. There is a concept. We look at the top one as if it's lower down, but it means it's Lavid, not the chavay rami.
Within 3 tvachim, it doesn't need to be a tefach.
Within 3 tvachim does not need to be a tefach, right? Because you have Lavid, we're looking like it's closed up, and you have your 2 beams
How is he
together.
love it to answer a question about Chavei?
Because he says the Bryce says look at the top ones if it's lower, not using the lumdus of Chavei Rami, using the idea of Lavid.
Isn't love and Chavei two separate things?
They are. So he's saying
But he's using love it to prove a point about Chavei.
he's saying you learned the Bryce wrong. The Bryce is talking about Lavid, and then we're not referring where the curves are so far apart from each other. They're very close to each other, within 3 tvachim. And we look as if they're side by side because of Lavid. And it's 2 separate cases. The 2 can't be too high, and the bottom ones can't be too low. But it's not one case. The one could be high, one could be low.
You have to have it up or down, not just only down.
Right, because of Lavid. Right. We'll stop over here by the 2 dots. Shreich.
We end up with Rava